Welcome everyone to an APH webinar. Today is routines-based instruction, collaboration in the school and home settings. We are so happy to have you join us today. If you are also here for ACV REP credit, the opening code word today is Freddie. F-R-E-D-D-I-E. Your opening code word today is Freddie. You will collect the opening and closing code words and send them together to outreach@aph.org. And to give us an idea of who is with us today, we have our basic survey. What is your job title and where are you from and how did you hear about this webinar? It helps our presenters know who's in the audience today. Welcome, welcome to APH webinar. It is routines-based instruction, collaboration in the school and home settings. Good morning, Lubbock, Texas. Glad to have you with us. If you are also collecting ACV REP credits and need a certificate of attendance, listen for opening and closing codes and send them to outreach@aph.org. The opening code today is Freddie, F-R-E-D-D-I-E. Welcome, New York City. Hello, Alabama. Hi to Austin, Texas and New Jersey. Good morning, Ohio. Glad to have you with us today. Hello, St. Louis, Missouri and Tennessee. Welcome, Newfoundland, Canada, South Carolina, West Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, Tallahassee, Florida, Hightstown, New Jersey, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Arizona. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you all with us today. Again, you are here for the APH webinar, routines-based instruction, collaboration in the home and school settings. If you are also collecting ACV REP credit, your opening code word today is Freddie, F-R-E-D-D-I-E. Good afternoon, Germany. Glad to have you with us. Hello, Ontario, Canada, and Delaware and Virginia. Glad to have you with us. And there is a poll, but if you can't access the poll, that is okay. You're welcome to put your information in the chat. To get us going, I am going to end the poll and share those results. 65% of you identified as a teacher of students with visual impairments, 38% orientation mobility instructor, 13% other because I cannot include all categories, 7% low vision specialist, 5% assistive technology specialist. We have a couple parents, paraprofessionals, some students in college programs, college faculty, and a few vocational rehabilitation specialists. Where are you from? Our winner today will be our southeastern United States with 35%, but we do have all over the United States. No territories today, 5% Canada, 2% other from other places. And thank you for letting us know how you heard about this webinar. So again, last time verbally, our opening code today is Freddie, F-R-E-D-D-I-E. And we're glad to have you join us today. And now I am going to turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Leanne, and welcome everyone. My name is Jim Sullivan, and I am the Director of Social Enterprise with APH. We are very excited about the folks that we have joining us today and the presentation, Routines-Based Instruction, Collaborating in the School and Home Settings. So our agenda today, we're going to go through it and introduce our presenters. We'll talk about the objectives, and then we'll get into that routines-based instruction presentations. We will do a brief wrap-up at the end. Just a reminder that this is worth 1.5 hours of CEUs, and throughout the course of the presentation, we would encourage you to drop your questions in the chat for our presenters. So as we get started, we'll talk about 3 products just briefly that relate to this presentation, products that I'm sure you're very familiar with. The Sensory Learning Kit is a kit used to aid challenged learners by creating daily schedules, lesson plans, and assessments for play or functional routines. The cost of the Sensory Learning Kit is $505, and it is quota eligible. Symbols and Meanings is another kit to consider. learning about people, objects, actions, and places so that you can understand the symbols related to these concepts is what this particular kit can be used for. It is $428 and is also quota eligible. And then lastly, Tactile Connections is an augmentative communication system for learners who are nonverbal and who have multiple disabilities. The cost of this solution is $162, and once again, it is quota eligible. And so now for our presenters. So leading off is Millie Smith. She is an APH consultant, I'm sure familiar to all of you there, and she works with students with visual and multiple impairment. So welcome, Millie. Thank you for being here with us. Stacey Chambers from Capel ISD is a teacher of the visually impaired and will participate today. Also from Capel ISD is Angela Campbell. She is an adaptive PE teacher. Moving along, we have Allison Clark, who is a physical therapist. And then finally, Wendy Prey, finally from Capel ISD, is an active learning classroom teacher. So you can see that we've got quite a bit of collaboration that's going on. And again, we want to welcome our presenters and we want to express our thanks for being here with us this morning/afternoon. Our objectives are as follows. We're going to share findings of a recently published JVIB research study on the value of routines-based instruction for learners with MVI. Share the typical process for scripting and perfecting a routine, including the key steps of assessment, team collaboration for scripting steps, embedding IEP goals, and ongoing progress monitoring. And then finally, we'll share at least 3 practical strategies for teachers and families for developing and implementing routines in the school and home setting. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to ask Stacey to share hers, and I'm going to throw it to our team members to kick things off.
All right, get this going here. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are excited to share our team's approach to routines-based instruction in the home and the school settings. As Millie and I started preparing for this presentation, we quickly realized we really couldn't do this information justice without having our other team members here sharing with us. It's really the backbone of what we do. We also work really closely with our OTs, SLPs, O&Ms, AT specialists, AI teachers. It's really all hands on deck when it comes to successfully creating and implementing routines for learners with severe disabilities and multiple impairments. We're excited to share that process with you today. I'm not sure if it's just me or if your 2020 has been anything like mine. I have a meme here that says, if 2020 was a slide, and it shows a playground slide that starts off good and then just kind of takes a vertical dive to the ground. And honestly, our team, you know, we had such great plans for our learners this year. We were so excited about some of the routines and different things we were doing in our classrooms. And the bottom just kind of dropped out from under us. But I have to say that we've been able to regroup, and I have so much confidence about what we have planned for the fall, and just knowing that that's rooted in the routines that we've been working so hard on. So I hope that as we continue to share today, that you kind of take something from that and can use it in your planning as you prepare for your new school year. Just a little background on our team's journey. About 5 or 6 years ago, we invited Millie Smith to come to our district to do some training. We wanted some new strategies for working with our learners in our active learning programs. And that training evolved into some research. And we began studying together the effects of routines for this population. And I just have to share that our team has really never looked back. You know, it's just ignited a passion in us because we're able to see the progress our learners are making. We see the growth that they have in their engagement, in the way that they interact with objects and people, and really in our own professional growth. And so, again, I hope that there's something today that you can take with you and bring back to your district and the learners that you work with. Jim went over our learning objectives today, and we do hope to be able to answer some questions. So again, please feel free to pop those into the chat, and we'll take a few moments at different parts to touch on those questions as they come. Millie is going to start us off with going into some detail about routines and why it's the foundation of what we do.
Good morning, everybody. It's such an honor to be here with you. The major part of this presentation is going to be contributions from the team members who have used what I'm about to talk about. And that's very, very significant. Let me set the stage for what you're going to hear them talk about. So first of all, what is a routine? It's important to acknowledge that a typical daily schedule for a learner at the sensorimotor level, and especially above the sensorimotor level, usually consists of a variety of different kinds of activities. And some of them are routines and some of them aren't, and that's fine. Activities in typical daily schedules that are not routines include things like small group activities and independent learning activities. A small group activity might be morning circle. And an independent learning activity, if you want sort of a picture, a placeholder for that in your mind, a great example of that are the techniques and adapted play environments described by Lily Nelson. So the important thing to keep in mind is that when establishing a new skill, certain instructional strategies are more effective with learners at the sensorimotor stage than others. And the most effective has been shown to be routine-based instruction. And I'll say more about why that's true in a minute. Small group activities, of the three I've mentioned, small group activities are important for a lot of different reasons. They're a great place to reinforce established skills. They aren't a great place to develop new ones. Independent learning activities like adaptive play environments are extremely effective for a lot of things. But as those of you who have used those techniques know, they leave out some things like communication. And they leave them out intentionally. So what we're going to talk to you about is what has been shown to be from research in cognitive psychology and very prominently in neurology to be the most effective strategies for establishing new skills in our most challenged learners, regardless of their chronological age. So that instructional strategy is called routine-based instruction. And it looks different for different kinds of learners. Routines is something that have been used in a lot of different settings by a lot of different folks. Service providers for students on the autism spectrum, for instance, are used to using routines in their structured learning activities. And those are routines, but they're not quite the kinds of routines that we're talking about. There's a special kind of sensory motor level routine that is extremely effective. And again, I'll give you a little bit of why that's true. In my role as developer of the sensory learning kit, the thing I probably took most seriously was making sure that there was a strong evidence base for the strategies presented to you in that program. And as I said, there's a ton of it out there. It's not widely circulated in educational circles because the population I'm talking about is so small. And so as I said, it comes primarily from cognitive psychology and neurology. So with that in mind, let me describe what a routine is. It's a special kind of activity. And it's an activity that has to include 4 criteria that you see displayed on your screen. It has to have a clear opening, a way of signaling to the student what's about to happen. And there are extremely important neurological reasons for that. The next thing that has to be true of an activity in order for it to be a routine is the steps have to occur in the same sequence each time the routine is done. And again, neurological reasons for that. And thirdly, the assistance given to the student, for a student in school, that would be supports and accommodations. Assistance given to the student have to be provided in exactly the same way each time the activity is done. Finally, there's a clear closing signal to the student that the activity is finished. So if you want kind of something to kind of be a marker for this, the hokey pokey can be a great routine. If the sequence of steps are done in exactly the same way and help is provided exactly the same way. And sometimes for some learners who are maybe beyond the sensorimotor level, you can do the hokey pokey differently, and it's still kind of a routine, but it's not the kind of routine we want. And it can be fun for them. So for a learner who's beyond the 2-year-old level cognitively, sensorimotor stage learners are somewhere between between birth and 2 years. For a learner who's beyond that, it can be very effective to do the parts of the body in a different order each time it's done. That's not highly effective, however, for a sensorimotor stage learner who needs a lot of time to mentally and motorically prepare for their participation. And the only way they can do that is to know what's going to happen next. So, Stacey pulled up this quote, and I don't remember saying it, but I guess I must have, and I kind of like it. So let me emphasize the part of it that I think is most essential for this presentation. It starts off by saying students with severe disabilities rarely do every step of a routine independently. So again, think about the hokey pokey. If you start off with put your right hand in, and the student has extremely limited motor ability and they can't put their right hand in by themselves, you still include that step. And so what you do by including it and including it in the same order each time is you create that expectation on the part of the learner that, oh, it's time for me to participate, and I know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm gonna try to do it, and then you help them do it. And you make sure that when you help them do it, you help them exactly the same way each time. So if you do that with elbow support, then you do it with elbow support. If their motor participation increases, which we've found from our research, it often does, then you may be able to drop back to a lower level of support. But that's data driven, and that's how you make those determinations. And it's one of the big reasons that collaboration with the team members, some of whom you're going to see represented today, is so important. Allison is a physical therapist, and she would be the one to observe that activity and say, you know what, I think you maybe just a little bit of wrist support at this point would be sufficient. Okay, and progress occurs as a result. So the benefits of routine-based instruction. Let me give you a couple of really important pieces from the research base, the evidence base for these strategies from cognitive psychology and neurology, and I'll make this really, really short. what I want you to keep in mind is in regard to the first item on the list there. And the print is small and I can't read it, so.
I can read it for you. Builds concepts of objects and concepts of time within the routines.
Oh, Leanne, thank you. Building object and time concepts. What cognitive psychology, learning is very different at the sensorimotor stage than it's at any other time in the life of the learner. And in the education community, and even in the special education community, we have emphasized, especially in the last few years, academic achievement. And none of us ever wants to leave that out. We want all the academic achievement we can get. And sometimes we're not real accurate about how much we're going to get or who we're going to get it from. So affording those opportunities is essential. But equally essential is making sure that the foundation, a firm foundation, is laid for the part of development that occurs before academics, which is described in most cognitive psychology as something called semantic development. And semantic development, you know that semantics is the use of language. So before a learner can read, they've got to understand language. It wouldn't do you a bit of good to learn how to phonetically say the words in a French textbook, if you didn't understand what those words meant. So reading is an important goal, but semantic development is the foundation for it to enhance our lives in any meaningful way. So follow me through this chain for just a minute. So we can't start with words. What we have to start with are concepts. And what routines do is they build concepts about people and objects. And they do that for our learners who are at the very earliest stages of learners, and then it becomes more sophisticated as they develop through the sensorimotor stage. So by the end of the sensorimotor stage, a typical learner, a typically developing learner, one without disabilities, understands the meaning of about 200 words. They only say about 20, but they understand the meaning of about 200. So the best way to make sure that those concepts that give words meaning are established, and the way it happens at the sensorimotor stage, is actual experience with objects, during which, as a phenomenal researcher, Eleanor Gibson, describes, sensorimotor stage learners learn what objects are like and what they can do with them, and then very significantly toward the end of that stage, what other people do with them. So, Leanne, if you'd read number 2.
Sure. Number 2, fosters coherence and emotional support.
Yeah. So coherence, it actually is a field of study in both cognitive psychology and neurology right now. So it's an important word, and it's an important research word. It provides a lot of evidence for us for what we need to be doing with this population of early learners. And here's what it means. Coherence means understanding what's going on around you. That feeling of, oh, okay, I'm all right, and I know I'm all right because I understand what's going on. It's absolutely essential. It lowers stress levels like nothing else does. And all of you know from extensive research that stress is the enemy of learning for young learners. Well, actually for all learners, chronic stress is. But for young learners, and especially learners with disabilities, stress is a huge barrier to learning. So what routines do is they create coherence. They do that by providing the learner with experiences that, as they're repeated the same way over time, with the same objects, doing the same things, people doing the same things, become predictable and meaningful. So Leanne, number 3.
Number 3, provides an opportunity to communicate.
Yeah. So in our programs for students with severe disabilities, there's a huge amount of emphasis on expressive language. And we have a lot of tools for facilitating expressive language. So when most people think about augmentative communication, they think about picture exchange and things like that, pods, and those are absolutely fabulous. But there's again a foundation that has to be laid for the use of expressive language. Remember those typical sensorimotor stage learners who understand 200 words before they say 20. So understanding words is the essential groundwork for using words. And as I just explained, the formative piece of establishing meaningful words is for words spoken by others, is having a good concept for what it is that word refers to. So what happens in routines is instructors, the implementers, we call them partners in the sensory learning kit, because a lot of different kinds of people are partners in routines. Parents, home interventionists, adult service providers. So what partners are careful to do is to use the same language consistently, and to keep it pretty short and concise, so that the learner is hearing fewer words and the same words in reference to the things that are happening in the routine. Now, don't overgeneralize that, because regular conversation of language, hearing that is important too. And you want that to happen at other times for the learner, absolutely. During routine, you want to be more structured and more specific. So the use of communication in a routine is you say something and the learner knows what you said. So again, the hokey pokey. You say, put your left hand in, and the learner demonstrates that he understands hand. He may look at either of his hands, and that's fine, because right and left probably don't mean anything left. But if he understands the meaning of hand, he may very well look at his hand. So that's what we're after at this stage. Now, and again, expressive communication, we're not leaving it out. And toward the end of the sensorimotor stage, it becomes a bigger part of what goes on in routines. One of the strategies used in the sensory learning kit approach are the object communication strategies of Dr. Jan van Dijk, who has some great strategies for object-based receptive communication. And Leanne, I'm ready for number 4.
Sure. Number 4, communicates a framework for learning.
Yes, communicates a framework for learning. Students, well, let me put it this way. Teachers of students from about the developmental level of 3 years and up are very structured about what they teach and how they teach it. What I've observed in my professional career is that the population of students who probably need structure the most are the ones who get it the less frequently, which is something that we need to change as much as possible. They don't need to have structure every minute all the time, but they need a large amount of it for learning and development. And an instructional activity works best for a teacher when they have a guide. So most teachers that I work with are very glad, teachers of students in early childhood programs and pre-kindergarten and kindergarten and on up, are very glad that they have a curriculum, that they have a structure for the instruction they provide. And the sensory learning kit tries to provide that for those of us who are partners for learners at the sensorimotor stage. So that sensory play isn't just this random thing. Everybody knows sensorimotor stage learners need sensory experiences with things, and they do. But the best learning occurs when those experiences are meaningful and intentional and purposeful, rather than just random. So the neurological piece that I want you to hold on to here, that relates to that structure, is that this is so complicated. Let me give you kind of a placeholder for those of you who will want to look at this in more depth after I say what I'm about to say. In neurology, there's a huge amount of research in many different things that relate to what I'm about to say. I'll just give you one example, which is evoked response potentials. And what researchers do is they look at the electrical activity in the brain and how it relates to sensory input in particular. And what they found is that, and again, this is just an example, is that there's a threshold, an activity threshold in the brain. And that when electrical activity is above that threshold, it facilitates long-term memory storage in a way that just doesn't occur otherwise. And the thing that contributes most to providing those potentials that rise above the basic threshold is active participation. And that's why a lot of our programs are called active learning. This is really not new information. It's just that it's been elaborated on, and there's a whole lot more of it now. There's even a new field of something called motor cognition. And so routines are designed so that they emphasize two elements that are essential to learning. One is consistency and one is frequency. So with consistency, what happens is you don't develop a new skill unless you develop a new neural network in the brain. And the electrical activity has to be above threshold in order for a new network to develop. So consistency is absolutely essential, and that's why you do those steps in exactly the same way every time at the sensorimotor stage. The second component is neurological and you have weak sort of in and out kinds of neurological activity in an activity, unless that network that is established with consistency is repeated frequently. And it's that frequency of repetition that strengthens the network and makes the learner able to participate at higher levels. So we are ready to talk about the article. Stacey's going to describe the article in a little bit more detail. I just want to say that the folks that you're going to hear from now were part of the team that I worked with in Capel, which is where we conducted the study, and their participation was phenomenal. And as Stacey mentioned earlier, there were other parts of the team, other members of the team who participated a great deal who didn't join us today, that included occupational therapists, speech language therapists, teaching assistants or paraprofessionals, parents, and I just want to express my gratitude to all of them. So Stacey will give you a little bit more information about the article now.
And Stacey, before we reach into that, there was a really good question from the audience. We wanted to have time to capture on. And Millie, this goes back to the previous slide. And we were wondering, could you just repeat the name of the person that you referenced? It was from the number 1 on that slide in regards to object-based routines for receptive communication. Do you recall the name of the person that you referenced when we talked about Build's concepts of objects and concepts of time within the routines?
There are 2 possible answers, so let me give you both of them.
Yes.
I mentioned Eleanor Gibson.
Okay.
And she's referenced in the Sensory Learning Kit guidebook. There are more. The guidebook was written, you know, as you all know, about 15 years ago. I do want to say that a revised version is in the final stages of development right now, and it's got much more current research information for you. If you don't find, if you don't just Google Eleanor Gibson, she's best way to get her information about her is Eleanor Gibson Perceptual Development.
Thank
And
you. Would the second one be Lily Nielsen as well?
I mentioned Lily Nelson.
Okay, thank you.
Fabulous research. I also mentioned Jan Van Dyke.
Thank you. That is great.
All right. Thank you, Millie, so much for sharing all that information. I've heard it before, but just hearing it again just reminds me so much of why we love doing what we do and why this is so important for our learners. So I wanted to take a few minutes and touch on our research article that was published in JVIB this past spring. We were able to take video and data for 4 learners with visual impairments and multiple impairments over a 4-month period of time. And 2 of those learners are highlighted in the research article that was published. But all of our learners made significant progress during that time. They showed increased skills in object perception, the way they interacted with objects, their motor planning, their anticipation of steps within the routine. So this is just really important research, I believe, for our field, because as Millie said, there's a lot of research out there, but this is something that really applies to the work that we do in our classrooms with kids every day. And so I encourage you to go out and find that article. It's something great you can bring back to your district to share with your administrators. It's just a great launching point to just feel real confident that the strategies that you're using are based on research and that we know it works and it's worth the time. We are going to shift now into our collaborative process just to kind of go through from beginning to end how we make a routine work for a learner. And that always begins with assessment. We do an assessment. It can be done as part of the FIE or when we're developing new IEP goals for a learner, or if we're just needing to come up with a new routine for a learner's day. We do use the materials in the Sensory Learning Kit from APH, and there are several assessments that can be found there, but we love their sensory response record. We use it for almost every one of our learners, and we love it because it's really easy to use, and it also gives us 3 main factors of information that are going to be really helpful later. The first piece that it looks at is it lets us know what kind of objects, what kind of sensory materials or sensory input that our learner gets really excited about. So we're going to find out what they really love. And that's important because we want to create routines that are motivating for our learners and things that they really want to be engaged with. The next thing this assessment does is it lets us know at what level the learner is participating and how they're interacting with objects. So we are going to find out if our learner is able to pay attention to objects. We're also going to find out if they're able to pay attention and also show us that they have ways to explore objects. So maybe they're reaching out and touching, shaking, banging objects, moving their face or mouth towards an object to explore. We may also find out that our learner has an understanding of the function of an object. So if you were to give them a bell, do they know that they're supposed to take that bell and ring it? And so that tells us so much information that we can use as we begin to create routines, because we now know their baseline level and we know where to start and then what skills we want to build in so that we can make progress with that learner. The other thing this assessment does is it gives us an opportunity to explore potential accommodations that we can use. So I love doing this with our team because we each come at it from a different angle and different perspective. And so we're able to discuss what kind of positioning is best for that learner. We can explore what kinds of visual objects the student's interacting with most, or what accommodations might help them to interact better. And so all of these things are going to help us as we begin with instruction. When our team gets ready to do an assessment, we always work together. We find a few times where we can go spend time with the learner. There's a picture here. It shows of a student and a teacher showing the student some red wind chimes. And there's Allison in the back giving some elbow support and some arm support so that she can move her fingers along the chimes. And so this is an example of what an assessment might look like for us. One person may be showing the learner some objects and the rest of us are observing, you know, how are they interacting? Do they like it? And again, that team collaboration is so important because, as you know, sometimes our learners' responses can be difficult to interpret. And so as we discuss with the team, we're able to really get a better understanding of what the learner is trying to tell us and what they like and how they're participating. One thing we always do is we try to take as much video as possible. And this is great so that we can share it with our other team members later. We store all those videos in our Google Drive. And something we always do is come back to it at the end of the assessment period and look at the videos together. We kind of look through and discuss overall what we saw, and that really helps us make a plan moving forward. I have some screenshots here of Google Forms that we have created as a district that help us as we do our sensory response record. And what we've done is we've taken the information from the sensory learning kit, that sensory response record, and you can do this too, is just create a Google form with some of that information you're trying to capture in a digital way. So we have places where we can indicate what the materials that we used, what kind of sensory channel that object was, the learner's response, how intense their reaction was, and what participation level they were participating at. And then what I love is it creates this very visual graph. And so we're able to look at that information at the end. And here on the one I have on the screen, it shows that the learner is primarily functioning at an attention level during this assessment. So again, it's just a quick snapshot for us of all that information so that we can use it to create really purposeful, intentional routines for our learner. So Angela is going to take it from here to talk through what that scripting of the routines looks like.
Thanks, Stacey. And I know several of you out there are probably wondering, what is an adaptive PE teacher doing talking about routines? But I had the opportunity to teach in an active learning classroom before I did adaptive PE. And so I have some background in that, and I wish I had met Millie years ago when I did it, because I think that we all walk into our classrooms and we have lots of activities and we have great activities. But the real piece where we can provide our learners better ways of instruction is through those routines. So as Stacey said, we have our assessment piece. We've all been able to watch videos, we've interacted with our learner, we've gathered all that data, and now as a team, we're going to look at and select items that our student has a strong response to. And these become the topics for our routines. And just like Stacey said, we're going to look at the levels of functioning for our students. And every routine, not every routine has to be at the same level. We may have some routines at the attention level. We may have some routines at the exploration level. And hopefully we can get a lot of our learners to graduate to the functional level. In the the picture that is on our slide, we have one of our students that is interacting with his teacher during an Explore routine. And she is presenting him with materials, and she has a starting point and a finish point. She has a starting basket and a finish basket. And our student was one of our learners that did not engage with objects very much at all. And through this exploration routine, we saw a huge increase in his ability to engage, and we worked him all the way through to a function level routine. So just to give you a little snapshot that when you start a routine, it may start off as exploration, but it can develop into a functional routine. So we've gotten together, we've chosen our motivating topic and our level of functioning. The next thing we want to look at is our IEP goals that we want to embed. And this is where everyone's perspective comes in and plays a huge part. And we really have to really tease out, are we looking for a motor response or a cognitive response? Are we looking for cognitive responses such as our learner is going to show us that they can anticipate each routine in the step, or each step in the routine? And can they show us that they understand what they need to do with motor imitation? And we can always provide assistance during the routine for them to perform the motor task, but just all of those steps together shows us that we're building that cognitive process. And then when we provide motor opportunities, we want to look at exploration, engagement with the object. Do we have them in the best positioning so they can engage with the object? And all through our routines, we want to make sure that we're building that receptive vocabulary and increasing their communication by giving them the opportunity to have non-verbal requests during the routine. So when we've got our topic, we've talked about all the embedded goals that we want to include. We want to script out very specific steps that are written from the perspective of what the learner will do. And this kind of it is a little backwards when you first start scripting routines. You want to make sure that we look at every step, we look at the prompting, we look at the cueing and the exact words to say, because we want to build that environment for the learner to feel safe and coherent. As we're using the lesson plan template that was provided by Millie, we know that we have an opening, so they're going to choose, and we'll choose an object symbol to identify the beginning of the routine. We want to write each of the steps for active participation. We want to limit our routines to no more steps than the learner can remember. And there have been times when we went through this process that we realized our routine had gotten really long and we need to divide it up into 2 routines. We want to have a clear closing signal. We want to include accommodations that include positioning. Our physical therapists and our occupational therapists are important there to make sure we have them in the best position to be able to engage with the materials. We want to make sure that we have all the visual accommodations available, including modification to items in the routine. And like I said, we have that targeted vocabulary where we're prompting with just those words that we want our learner to learn receptively. And one of the big things as we are providing assistance is that we want to use hand under hand prompting, and we want to provide our learner with a lot of wait time so that we can watch and wait for them to provide the response that we're looking for. As Millie talked about earlier, on our lesson plan template, we also document the teaching partner, which is typically the classroom teacher, but it can also be the paraprofessional or other staff in the classroom. We document our observing team members, and this doesn't mean that it has to be in person. These can be team members that can also view the routine through video. We document all of our modifications, our accommodations and materials that we need. That way, as the routine grows, we always have that information to look back on if we need to expand the routine. And we also include the duration. We want to make sure that we, again, just know that we're not going to do too many steps. We want our learner to be able to remember those steps. We also have a testing period the first couple of weeks that a routine is established. That's the diagnostic phase. And we want that routine done very consistently as a team. We want to be able to come and collaborate, to give feedback, to make sure if we have any steps that need to be adjusted, that we do that. And when we're writing our routine, we want to remember that repeating steps is a good thing. It provides more practice, and we want to provide that as much as we can. Our lesson plan template also provides a spot for documentation. And as a team, we sit down and we decide, are we going to just do yes, no? Are we going to document the frequency, the duration, anecdotal? What information do we want to document that will help us really see what our learner is getting out of the routine? And we want to take documentation on the IEP steps only. Wendy's going to provide us with some more insight on the day-to-day implementation of routines in the classroom.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am not a public speaker, I'm a teacher, so bear with me. I'm gonna own that I'm a little bit nervous. Like Angela said, I wish that I had had Millie way early when I started. I've been doing this for a long time. And like Stacey said, after going through this process with Millie, I have never looked back from using routines in the classroom. It has been the most powerful tool that I've been blessed to get my hands on. And so I just want to share a little bit about how you can make this work in the classroom. So you want to follow your routine 1 to 2 times per day. And I know you're thinking, oh my goodness, how do I fit this in? But the best way to do it is to make it flow naturally. For example, the learner that you see in the picture, we are doing a hair routine right there, but he actually has 4 to 5 routines that he's able to do now. I have had him since age 3, so we've made a lot of good progress. But like he has a washing dishes routine, so that is something we would do after lunch or after a snack time, because that would be a natural flow for cleaning up and letting him go through his process. And while washing dishes doesn't sound that motivating, it's the water piece that he loves so much. So we have total buy-in, and we were able to discover that through the testing and the diagnostic process. What are his high motivators? So we were able to use that. We do the routines consistently. And when you think about a routine, I know it can sound very boring to think, okay, I'm going to do the same thing every day, same words, same steps, but it actually has a completely opposite effect. That is the most joyful time of my day, and I look so forward to the routines, because every day, even though we're doing the same thing, something different happens. And it could be that you see that learner, you see the spark in their eye when they realize, oh my goodness, I give you this soap bottle and I can go play in the water with you. Or that moment when you ask for an object and they can hand it to you. It is so powerful. And it's just something that makes your whole day worthwhile. And while you're doing it, it is so important to video. And it's funny, if you guys knew me, you would know that video makes me panic. But now that I've been spending so much time with it, I love it so much. I've used it in so many different ways. I've used it to show parents. I've used it to go back and look at what I'm doing and think, oh, I wish I had said, or I realized I should have put in. And it's such a great tool. And when you schedule that time for feedback with your team, don't think of it as, oh, everyone's going to pick apart my routine or there's a problem with my routine. It's so amazing to have that piece to let every person look, because there's going to be times when you're struggling with just a little piece of a routine, and they're able to step in from looking at it from a different angle and say, hey, what if we tried this? Or have we thought about doing it this way? It is such a positive and wonderful experience. And so having said that, you want to build a strong relationship with your team, your OT, PT, APE, speech, VI, all of them. They will be your best friends. And when you start doing this process, it is really, really fun. And it can make the hardest skill that you're trying to teach a learner just so positive for both of you, for the family, and so much fun. And I am going to toss it to Allison, and Allison is also going to share a specific example of how having that video piece helped me tweak a routine.
Okay, so now that we have our routine set, what's next? A buzzword in our district is PLC, or Professional Learning Community. And this is our way of all coming together to collaborate and identify what to do to help learners make progress, and also to determine what to do when they're not making progress. And the great thing about working as a team is we all have our own areas of expertise that we bring to the table to work together to form a plan to help the learner make progress. So as support staff, ongoing observation of routines is really important. Many times we observe the routines in the classroom. One thing to keep in mind when you're observing in the classroom is just to make sure that you're observing a little bit, give a little bit of distance to what's going on with the routine, because if you're in the eyesight of the learner, you can be a distraction. They may be wondering what's going on over there. There's somebody new in the classroom. So it can change the dynamic of the routine. So just be aware of staying out of not being a distraction while watching the routine. And of course, another way to observe is through videos, as been said. And a really great benefit to videos over time is you can see the progress that is being made. Sometimes on a day-to-day basis, it's hard to see that progress, but over time, when you go back to look at a video from a month or two before, you say, wow, look at the difference our learner has made. So after observing the routine, it's also important to have a way to provide feedback to the teacher. And so our team decided that a Google form works really well. So within our form, we have a lot of different things that we provide feedback. We talk about which routine we're observing, the person observing the routine, and then we have open-ended comments on accommodations. We look at visual accommodations, positioning of materials, positioning of the learner, pacing and prompting of the routine. Is the routine pace going too fast? Does it seem like maybe the learner isn't having enough time to process the steps of the routine? Do we need to maybe tweak some of the prompts that are given? And then any other additional challenges that the learner seems to be coming across within the routine, whether it's sensory or an aversion to materials or just general distractions within the classroom environment. And as Wendy said, an example of how I as a support staff member can provide feedback after reviewing a routine is we have a learner who has a snack prep routine. And so together as a team, we scripted out the steps of the routine. And it seemed like every time he went through the routine, he stopped at the same part. And it was a part where he was opening a drawer to get supplies out. Well, we couldn't figure out why he kept getting stuck at that part, because he loves to open and close drawers. Well, it wasn't until I really went back and watched the video of the routine that I realized, since the routine is being done in standing, he was just having trouble coordinating his balance and pulling out the drawer. He just couldn't do that. He didn't have the balance and stability to do that. So we came back together as a team and discussed what we needed to do about that. And we decided that that part of the routine wasn't essential. So we modified that step in the routine, and he just indicated the next step by touching the drawer. And then Wendy opened it and he was able to get his materials and move on to the next step of the routine without a problem. So that's just an example of how we can use video and make adjustments as needed. And then in addition to the feedback forms, we also meet regularly as a team to discuss the routine and figure out, are there any instructional adjustments that need to be made, just like that little tweak we made in that one routine. And then over time, we discuss ways to expand the routine. Can we add more steps? Is there another goal that we can incorporate within the routine? And then eventually, as the learner becomes more consistent and more confident in the routine, we talk about role release. And that's where, if the special ed teacher's been doing the routine with the learner every day, let's see if maybe she can release that to the paraprofessional. And can the learner generalize that skill and that routine to somebody else? So those are just ways that we kind of all work together and continue to collaborate and progress the learner through the routine.
Allison, I wonder if we could just interject for a moment. There is such a valuable question that has been posed from our audience, which fits in so nicely when we're talking about the team, we're talking about role release. What's guidance that any of you might be able to share about instructing families virtually to be completing the routines when the home life may look a little bit different than the classroom?
I'm so glad that question came up, and we are actually going to devote a lot of time at the end of the presentation to talk about how we've transferred this process to the home setting. So I hope we can get to that part in just a little bit in our presentation. Would that be okay?
That is fabulous. Thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Allison, so much. I wanted to make sure that because we had so many VI professionals part of our webinar today, just to touch on the role of the VI teacher, just to kind of empower the VI teacher that you are an important member of this team. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming to wonder, okay, you know, how might I begin sharing this information with my district, with my classroom teachers? But we do really have a unique opportunity because we have access to the American Printing House for the Blind materials. We can use some of our quota funds on the sensory learning kit and have access to these webinars and resources. So I really do encourage you, if your district is not using these types of routines in the classroom, that you share these resources with them and feel empowered to do so. I also feel that the sensory response record is such an incredible tool as a VI teacher because I use those results as part of my learning media assessment in my FIE report. And so that is just a critical component. It's really our job on the team to help share the best learning media and sensory preferences for our learners. And so I really think that that's critical. And just as Allison said and Angela said, as we script the routines, each of us has such important information to share in regard to accommodations. And one of the things that's really important to me as a VI teacher is that we want our learners to use their functional vision most effectively. When learners have reduced vision and motor skills, we want to find as many opportunities for them to use their combined vision and touch within a routine. And so that's really valuable to bring. Also, we help with the use of object symbols and finding the most appropriate symbols to use for that learner's vision, sensory preferences, and the routine that we're going to be doing. So just a little note and shout out to our VI teachers here on this one. I'm going to toss it back to Angela, and she's going to give us some just real quick practical tips for how we collaborate as a team.
Thanks, Stacey. So when we started down this wonderful journey with Millie, one of the things that we quickly ran into is how could we share information not only with our team, but also with Millie through the process. And so Google Forms became a great tool for us to use. We were able initially to use it to have the video uploaded into Google Drive. We had a feedback form where all of us on the team, including Millie, were able to watch the video when we had a chance. provide that feedback on the form, and our teacher could access it anytime she needed to be able to kind of go back and forth with questions, or maybe if we had a question, Wendy could go into the document and give us a quick little response. And then that way it was kind of real-time tweaking of the routine without us having to worry about scheduling. We didn't all have to be in the same room to make this happen. We had that collaborative space where we could all give our information and receive information in real time. We have we have shared drives that we use in our classrooms, and it's worked really well. It's one of the tools that really helped us with virtual learning, as all our information was in one place. We had the routines all gathered in one place. It makes video uploading a lot easier when you have Google Drive, because most of our devices, you can just pop it right into Google Drive. We've used with the sensory response record, we've been able to create a Google form with that and use that information. And again, it's a good way to have information, a collaborative space where we can, in real time, provide ongoing data and be able to look at it and get feedback. And I know in the chat, I saw a couple of questions about could we share Google Forms? And I think we probably could do that, and just kind of also give you information on how you can create your own. I've worked with a couple of school districts who really wanted to use the forms in different ways. That's one of the nice things about Google Forms, is that you can create it however you need on whatever information you need to be getting. So I'm going to kick it back to Stacey, and she's going to share with you some videos of our learners and their success.
So we're really happy that APH, on their YouTube page, they've highlighted 4 of our learners' journeys from beginning to end to show their great progress. And so we're going to take a look at a couple clips today. First, we're going to start with our learner, Freddie. If I can find him. Freddie, when he first started with us, he was showing us skills at the exploration level. And so he was interacting with objects, was pretty motivated by that. Also, he was having a lot of self-stimulatory behaviors, which was making it difficult for Wendy to be able to go through their instructional activities. One of the things that kind of helped calm him down was some massage on his head. And so we decided to use that as a topic for our routine, and also teach him the function of objects in a very structured way. So we wanted to show you, this is what the routine looked like in March at the beginning of the process.
March. Hair routine. Exploration with emerging function. Freddie's functional level goal is to demonstrate understanding of the function of 4 objects by initiating the action associated with their typical use. Freddie selects his hair brushing routine on his iPad, registered trademark.
Good job. Thank you. Brush your hair.
Freddie reaches into his routine box and retrieves the water bottle.
There's our water.
Freddie holds the bottle while Ms. Prey sprays the water.
You want to feel it? Yeah, that's your water. Let's put it in your hand. Put some water in your hand.
With assistance, Freddie turns his hand over to receive the water. With elbow support, Freddie briefly touches his hair, so Ms. Prey begins the head massage.
Oh, you're almost there. There you go. Okay. Let's look at your hair. Look at your wild hair.
Freddie looks in the SLK mirror and then to his teacher for confirmation.
That's pretty funny, huh? You want to brush? Let's brush it. Let's brush it.
Freddie grasps the brush, and with light elbow support, he hands it to Ms. Prey, who begins to brush his hair.
There you go. Do you want more? Do you want more brush? You have to tell me.
Freddie grasps the brush to indicate he wants more brushing. With prompting, he gives the brush to Ms. Prey.
Bring it to me. Bring it to me. Almost. Thank you.
Ms. Prey brushes his hair again.
Okay. Let's look at your handsome hair. Look at you.
Freddie looks in the mirror and to his teacher.
Look right there. You look so handsome. Can you help me clean up? We're finished. Let's clean up.
So Wendy can attest to this, but she did this routine with Freddie multiple times a day, every day for several months. And that hard work really paid off because we really did see a lot of progress in the way Freddie interacted with these different objects in the routine. I want to kind of fast forward to May. I want to show you some of the progress that he made and also show you how we incorporated a new object at that time because of that progress, but also just to keep the routine fresh after doing it for so many months. I'm going to move forward here.
Level. Freddie selects his brush hair routine on his iPad.
Let's brush your hair. I know. Okay, I'm going to spray the water.
Freddie now lifts the bottle of water out of the box without arm support. Freddie consistently holds his palm open to receive water. Freddie has difficulty bringing his open hand to his head. Watch the teacher conference chapter to learn why. He makes it with a little assistance. He enjoys his head massage. Freddie pulls the mirror from the box independently and looks at his wild hair. Ms. Prey presents and turns on a hairdryer.
Would you like to dry your hair?
Freddie looks to his teacher for confirmation and then picks up the dryer. Ms. Prey helps Freddie hold the hairdryer straight, but he keeps a good grip on it. She places the dryer back on the table.
Would you like to dry your hair?
Freddie picks it up immediately. As you can see, Freddie enjoys drying his hair and waves his free arm up and around to the sound and feel of the hairdryer.
So that's Freddie, and we're going to share a little bit more about Freddie later in the presentation. We also want to introduce you to Arna. We really feel like it's important to share Arna with you because I know she represents a big population of the learners that we see every day. She has a lot of limitations in her motor ability, which makes it difficult sometimes for us as we're creating routines where we're trying to teach skills for exploration and function. When we first started this process with Arna, during the assessment piece, she was showing us that she was at the attention level. She really enjoyed listening to sounds and music and the sounds objects made and people talking. She would calm and listen to that, but we were wanting to teach her through a routine how her body could interact with objects to make a sound. So we created the move bells routine, which I'm going to show here.
Move bells routine. Exploration. Arna learns direct body, object, cause, and effect by moving her body to ring bells. While Arna lies in supine on a wedge, Ms. Mallory tells Arna that it is time for her move bells routine by presenting bells in the now container using sound, movement, and high visual contrast accommodations. The bell bracelet has orange fabric attached to it to make it a more attractive visual target. Ms. Mallory uses elbow support to help Arna reach for and touch the bells so she can integrate visual and tactual information while reading her calendar.
Get ready. The bell is on your hand. Move hand.
In phase 1 of the routine, Ms. Mallory places the bells on Arna's hands, knees, feet, and head. She labels each body part and tactually models movement to make the bells ring.
The bell is on your knee. Move knee. The bell is on your foot. Move foot. The bell is on your foot. Move foot. The bell is on your knee. Move knee. All right, the bell is on your head. Move head. All right, Arna, it's your turn.
In the second phase of this routine, Ms. Mallory places the bells on each body part and gives Arna ample time to move them herself in order to make the bells ring.
Get ready. The bell is on your hand. Move hand. Good job, Arna. Right. The bell is on your hand. Move hand. Good job.
So, not to be a spoiler alert, but Arna really does gain so much skill during this process with the routine. And if you go back and look at the videos later, she really even moves into demonstrating function of objects. So it's just so exciting for us to see that progress because we were able to do a very specific intentional routine over a long period of time. And so we're excited to share those with you. We are going to move back to our presentation. It's a good time to pause if there's any questions that have come up at this point.
I do know they still will want you to get to home and how you transferred it to home.
Yes, we are trying. We're going to head that way now.
I would head that way right now.
Okay. So this is the picture I showed my kids of what the teachers are doing this summer. It's of the cast of the Frozen movie looking out into the unknown because we don't know what next school year will look like or even next week. But I do feel confident that if we can transition these routines into the home or school setting, you will have success with your learners. And it's a really great opportunity to partner with parents in that process. Wendy, can you give us a snapshot of what that's looking like for you right now?
Yes. So I was blessed to teach ESY this summer, and that program was done online. So I decided to, we're not supposed to technically teach anything new during this time, but I decided to take on using Zoom with my parents. And that was a very strong tool to be able to get these routines into the home. And honestly, I wish I had started it when we first decided, or not decided, but had to shut down because of the situation. So I've included 3 pictures here, and one is of Freddie that you've seen. And I created an object schedule just like he uses at school. And we sent that home, and that's he and his mom using the schedule. And he's actually telling mom there he wants to wash dishes. In the second picture, we were able to recreate a learner making choices with technology through the use of a switch. Now, he doesn't have a switch yet, but we were able to create one by mom used a red lid, which is very similar to the switch we have at school. We will be providing one for the fall for distance learning, but for right now, he will activate the switch and mom completes the step for him. So he's still getting the thought of, I'm using my switch to turn on the computer program I want after making a choice. And in the third picture, mom has created a routine that he does at school. It's sorting water bottles and paper because they love to recycle at home. And that was something that mom kind of chose with me because it's something they do that she is very passionate about. So they were able to do that. So through the use of Zoom, we've been able to transition. And if you want to switch to the next slide, I'm just going to kind of run them together if that's okay. We've been able to transition these routines to home. And so now you see Mom and Freddie doing his washing dishes routine. So that's been wonderful we posted the routines in Seesaw. They were modified. You could also, you don't have to use Seesaw. You could email the routine to your families. We did modify them. We made them much simpler to look at. We took out the goals and we simplified the accommodations to make sure they were parent friendly. And we made sure to not use any strange acronyms or things that they would not recognize. So by letting them read through, then I was able to Zoom, and in real time, I'm able to help Mom tweak the routine. Now, washing dishes flowed pretty similar to what was at school, so it wasn't a problem. But we did have a shredding routine that she was having trouble because of the location of the shredder in her home. That was such an easy fix. We talked through it together. We planned it out, and he tried it for the first time at home and did beautifully. It was a lot of hand under hand from Mom, but that's expected because it was his first time to transition that to home. So the most important thing is make sure to have open communication with your parents about which routines sound feasible with their schedules, what supplies they might need, and if there's preferences. And you may need to help gather some supplies. Stacey and Gina were instrumental in helping me get some supplies to some learners that they needed that were more similar to what we had at school. And then you want to share those routines. And if you have any school videos, those are wonderful to share, because I was able to even take little clips like Stacey just did for you all and show it to a parent to kind of help them understand the process if they need that visual. And then the Zoom sessions with the families, they provide that same support and feedback that we like. And I've been able to take data from those videos. So I have amazing concrete data, and I'm really proud to say, talking to some of our other program teachers, my data is actually more concrete than theirs was, because they had questions about how much did the learner do on their own? How much did, the parent help? What was involved in this? Where I've got that actual video where I'm watching it. So that has been an amazing little surprise for me that I didn't expect. And then for our next slide, starting routines at home virtually, again, same thing. I really shared a lot with the parents ahead of time on the benefits of routines. And I made sure that we chose a routine that was motivating, or a daily living routine. Some parents are going to want more, maybe some sensory, if they enjoy, music or having their hair brushed or things like that. And that is okay. And then some are going to choose more functional, like one of my other parents with the recycling, she really wants a laundry and a washing dishes. So I'm working on that now, and the team will help me. I'm going to Zoom with the parents again in the fall, and I'm going to have our team Zoom with me, because that way I have another set of eyes helping me. And it's also a great way to meet all the requirements that your district may set for you of, there has to be so much face-to-face time, there has to be data, there has to be active student participation. And that's hard with active learning, but this is a phenomenal way to do that. And if needed, you can record the videos. Just be sure to get parent permission, but all of mine have been 100% on board, and we're thrilled with me to share our success with you all today. And then be sure to Zoom with your team for scripting routines with parents, because there's going to be those pieces like Allison mentioned earlier, the struggle with the drawer. Those are pieces that they can help you navigate right there in real time. So then there's no frustration from parents and students, and it really becomes almost seamless. And I cannot stress enough the importance of video and how I wish I had started Zooming earlier. So don't be afraid to do that, and do not be afraid to reach out to your team for help. So Allison, I'm going to throw it back, or Stacey, sorry, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yes, and just to kind of chime in again on the VI teacher role, but also to speak for any other support staff that's working with families virtually. You know, in the spring, we were a little bit unsure about how to provide direct time or to provide consult time with our learners. And we may have been providing different activity suggestions or different types of activities that the family could replicate at home. But just again, in regrouping as a team, we really believe in these routines, and we really see the potential value of sharing them with families in the home. If we're able to Zoom with the teacher and the family at the same time and observe those routines, we can provide the same kind of feedback that we would if we were in the classroom with the learner. And I think that that is just really valuable an experience for the family, because it may not be something that they may have ever had the opportunity for, to have somebody really looking at the way that they're doing different activities at home and how we can give the learner a more active participation and really work towards the skills that we would be working on in class. So again, just if you're the VI teacher and you want to talk with your team about how you can utilize this strategy, we found that our families were feeling overwhelmed in the spring of so many different things being thrown at them, and being able to really focus on beginning with one routine and then gradually adding more to their daily schedule really helped the families feel more confident and in control of what their day would look like, and just to be able to see that progress, just as we get excited about seeing the learners' progress in school as well. Angela or Allison, did you want to chime in with anything about your support roles virtually?
I think just as a support staff member, just with distance learning, just continue to be part of that team and hopping on the Zooms. That way we can provide support to the parents too, because they are such an integral part of the process, especially during distance learning. So just being available and an active participant within the team is important.
And when
I saw too, just real quick, I know Wendy talked about Seesaw. That was one of the ways we used to communicate with parents. And Freddie's mom had a cute little video of him playing on a piano. And it was basically a routine that they had created at home, not really realizing that it was a routine. Because when we watched the video, he was in a safe mode. He was ready to learn. He knew what was coming next, and it looked really good. So those are the opportunities that as a team we can really jump on and say, hey mom, you're doing a great job. Let's take what he's doing there and apply it to some more of those functional routines that we can help create for your home environment. So it may not be creating all new things. It could be utilizing some of the things that they're doing at home already.
You guys only have a few minutes left, so I want to at least grab these two questions that did come in. Is silly productive? Is being silly productive? For example, handing Freddie a dinosaur instead of a hairbrush.
I'll let Millie field that one.
So would you say again?
Is being silly productive? Giving a dinosaur to Freddie instead of the hairbrush.
Okay. Again, the materials, the learning media that you want to use for your activities are those that are most motivating for the learner. So if the learner is crazy about the dinosaur, use it and build in the routine opportunities to communicate and to anticipate what the next step is going to be with whatever it is they love. You can hand the dinosaur to your partner, knowing what she's going to do with it after you hand it to her. And that may be as significant a part of learning as handing her the hairbrush is. However, don't you decide that the dinosaur is better than the hairbrush. So that's why it's so essential to do that sensory response record assessment. You present lots of different kinds of objects that have different kinds of sensory aspects to see what the learner is wild about. It's that desire on the learner's part to engage the object that is essential to learning.
For those of you that switch to remote suddenly, if you're starting remote and want to begin using routines, is it better to start with a home-based routine that can later be transferred to school, or vice versa?
Wendy, what's been your experience so far?
So far, I have used routines that were from school because we're very careful at school, the whole team, to plan things that could easily transfer from home to home. And we started this actually before remote learning was even a thing, just to be able to have those parents participate and join in as well. So if you haven't done anything, I would think of something that could go both ways that's motivating to a learner, like washing dishes or a get ready routine that would just involve like brushing hair, washing hands, maybe brushing teeth, something like that, that you could easily work with both ways. And I think that would really help you and the parents.
You had two acronyms. You had SSR and then I think LIP or LIE.
Actually, the second one was FIE.
FIE, that was it.
Yes, the FIE, at least in our district, stands for full individual evaluation. And then the SR is the sensory response record from the sensory learning kit that we use. Okay.
Well, I have to say thank you all. We have run out of time. Excellent presentation. It was so great to have all of you here. I hope to have you back at some point soon. So again, from APH and from everyone in the chat, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll work on stopping the recording.